This happened on my first shift of the week. I had been a nurse for over a decade, and working nights was my routine. The hospital was old, and some corners felt creepy after hours. I remember thinking it would be just another night when I walked by room 204 and heard faint humming. I thought it was a patient humming to themselves, but when it stopped, an unsettling feeling crept over me. At first, I brushed it off. I went about my tasks, but the rest of the night felt oddly slow. I made my rounds, checking on patients, but that humming kept playing in my head. I didn't hear it again, but something was off. As the week went on, I noticed strange things. The computer at the nurse's station crashed more than once. It was always when I needed to access a patient's file. I had to keep asking for help, which only added to my frustration. I felt like eyes were watching me in those empty hallways. I thought it was my imagination, but it was hard to shake the feeling. One evening, I was taking notes when I glanced at a patient's chart. The details didn't match what I remembered. The patient, an elderly man, hadn't received a treatment listed. I checked with my colleague, but she had no idea what I was talking about. It was like I was trapped in a weird loop. I started questioning everything. The sounds continued. Sometimes I heard creaking in the hallways. Other times whispers seemed to come from nowhere. It felt like a prank, but I couldn't figure out who would bother. My heart raced as I turned a corner and saw a figure in the distance. I rushed toward it, but there was nothing there, just the empty hall. I thought maybe I was just overtired. As I finished my shift one night, I looked back at the hospital, thinking maybe I was imagining things. But I wasn't sure. I never saw the other nurses react as I did, but they all had their own shifts to worry about. Maybe they experienced something too, but I couldn't ask. I felt like I was starting to lose it. Then one night, the humming returned, clearer this time, and I felt frozen. I took a deep breath and walked toward it, almost like I was being pulled. As I approached room 204, I stopped. The humming stopped too. Was someone inside? I opened the door. I heard something behind me, and my heart dropped. I turned around to see nothing, but I was sure I wasn't alone anymore. I felt cold. I stepped back into the hallway. It was empty, but it felt wrong now. Then I heard a whispered voice, clear and chilling. "Help me." I was terrified. I looked back at room 204. The door was slightly ajar, and I noticed a nameplate I'd never seen before. It read Jessica Williams. I knew my name, but why was it there? I stumbled back as a deep realization hit me. Had I been here before? I felt trapped in a cycle, replaying a nightmare that was my own. As I looked into the room one last time, I saw my reflection in the glass, but it wasn't just me. Behind me was a pale figure, smiling.
My heart sank as I realized I wasn't the only nurse working the night shift. I was the one who never left. I couldn't shake that smile. Its haunting presence felt stitched to the back of my mind. I stepped back from the door, breathing heavily. In that moment, it was clear. I needed answers. But where would I find them? My instincts told me to avoid room 204. After all, confronting whatever was inside felt too dangerous. Instead, I headed to the break room. I thought maybe the familiarity of coffee could bring some clarity, or at least some comfort. As I stood there, every creak and groan of the hospital seemed amplified, echoing doom. I filled my cup, but a sudden noise made me jump. A file dropped from the counter. I stared at it for a moment, frozen, but the urge to investigate drew me closer. I picked it up, noticing it belonged to a patient named Jessica Williams. My pulse quickened as I opened it, hoping for some connection. Scrawled medical notes filled the pages, but the final entry caught my attention. Transitioning to palliative care due to unexplained complications. I felt a wave of uncertainty. "Unexplained?" I whispered, now eager for more. I shuffled through the papers, desperate for context. Then I heard it, the soft humming again, growing louder this time. My heart raced. I looked around the break room, hoping to find some clue as to the source, but only darkness and shadows stared back. The humming didn't seem to come from any particular direction. It was as if it surrounded me. I dropped the file and burst out into the hallway, drawn toward room 204 once more. I was terrified, but I couldn't help myself. The urge to know more was overwhelming. As I approached, the door creaked open slightly, as if inviting me inside. I felt it again, that cold, creeping sensation, but this time I didn't stop. Fear pulsed through me as I crossed the threshold. The room was dimly lit, a flickering bulb casting eerie shadows on the walls. I called out hesitantly, "Hello? Is anyone here?" My voice trembled in the silence. No answer came, but the humming shifted into a familiar tune, one I remembered from childhood, a lullaby my mother used to sing. Then it hit me.
Jessica. I needed to connect with her spirit. I rifled through the belongings in the room, half expecting some hidden message or item that would provide clarity. That's when I saw it. A photo on the bedside table. It showed a young woman, smiling brightly, with a playful gleam in her eyes. I picked it up, feeling a tingle of recognition. My gut twisted. The woman looked so much like me. I felt sick. Was this a coincidence? I dropped the photo, suddenly unable to breathe. The humming reached a crescendo, and I could sense a presence moving closer behind me. I froze, dread washing over me as I turned to face whatever awaited me. But instead of a shadowy figure, I saw only the flickering of the curtains.
With my heart racing in my chest, I looked back at the photo, half expecting it to have changed. It hadn't, but now the feeling of being watched was overwhelming, oppressive even. Then the door slammed shut. Panic flooded me. I was trapped. "Let me out!" I shouted, pounding on the door. The humming started again, this time louder, accompanying my rising panic. In that moment, I felt the cold breath on my neck, sending shivers down my spine. Something was with me. I needed to escape, but I also needed to figure out who Jessica really was. The questions spiraled in my mind as I frantically pushed against the door. I couldn't let this be the end. I had to uncover the truth before it was too late. I pressed against the door, willing it to budge. My heart hammered in my chest, every second stretching like an eternity. The cold breath on my neck sent a jolt through me. I swung around, but there was nothing, just empty air. The humming persisted, weaving itself into my thoughts, whispering to me. "Please," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. "I just want to understand." I pushed harder against the door, my palms sweating. I needed out, but a flicker of logic crept in. What if I stayed? What would happen if I embraced this connection? Taking a deep breath, I stepped back from the door. I decided to face whatever this was, to understand. I turned, scanning the dim room again. The photo on the bedside table drew my gaze. Jessica Williams. She felt like a ghost, an echo of my own life, but with so many questions. I reached for the photo once more, studying every detail. The contours of her face, her smile, it mirrored my own. A shiver ran down my spine. Had she lived here? Did she work here? Why was she lingering in this room? As I turned the photo over, something slipped out from the back. A small note, yellowed and creased from time. I unfolded it, my fingers trembling. The handwriting was hurried, as if written in a moment of panic. "Help me. It's not what you think. I am not alone." I felt the breath catch in my throat. Help? Who was she asking for help from? My mind raced. Was she trapped here too? The humming grew louder, almost frantic, as if urging me to do something. "Is this about you, Jessica?" I called out, my voice wavering. "Are you here?" As if in response, a heavy silence fell. I closed my eyes tightly, feeling a surge of desperation. I needed a sign, anything. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. The air turned electric, and I felt a presence wrap around me. It was different this time, not just the cold, but something warmer, more inviting. Panic gave way to curiosity. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice a shaky whisper. The shadows seemed to pulse in response, forming shapes that danced along the walls. "I won't hurt you," a soft voice broke through the air. It was barely above a whisper, but it felt like an embrace. "I need you to listen."
It's not just my fate that hangs in the balance. My heart raced even more, the fear mixing with an overwhelming need to know. "What do you mean? What happened to you?" The humming shifted into a sorrowful tune. I felt it burrow deep into my chest, pulling at my heartstrings. "Find me," the voice urged, a hint of desperation threading through. "Please." And just like that, the darkness faded, leaving me isolated again. The door swung open slowly, creaking against the wall. I took a tentative step forward, still clutching the note. Chunky fear tiptoed back into my thoughts, but I swallowed hard. This was the first time I felt a connection. I couldn't turn back now. I stepped out into the hallway, the oppressive silence following me like a shadow. Was I ready for whatever lay beyond? I had to be. Jessica's plea echoed in my mind. Something dark was happening, and I was getting closer to understanding. I had to find her. The question was, where would she lead me next? I took a deep breath and moved further into the dimly lit hallway. The unsettling quiet gnawed at me. Each step felt heavy, the shadows elongating as if reaching out. I needed to figure out what was happening. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, as if Jessica's presence lingered close behind me. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sickly hue on the walls. I glanced back.
Nothing. I took another step, pushing myself to the end of the corridor. I found a door marked Archives. I hesitated. Should I really be doing this? Curiosity pulled me in, stronger than my fear. As I turned the doorknob, it creaked open, revealing piles of dusty old files. The room smelled of stale paper and secrets. I flicked on a light, the bulb buzzing to life with a faint hum. A row of cabinets lined the walls, each filled with records from past patients. I felt a tug on my heartstrings. Would there be answers here? I started sifting through the old files, searching for any hint about Jessica. Names, dates, and medical histories blurred together. I stumbled upon a file labeled Jessica Williams. My breath caught in my throat. No way. How could this be? I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was a medical report, dated just a month before her disappearance. It detailed a strange condition, visions, haunting dreams, and bizarrely, mentions of hearing humming sounds. My pulse quickened. This was her. I flipped through the pages, desperate for more. My hands trembled as I read about her treatment and the breakthrough sessions she had. It looked like they were trying to connect with something beyond her own mind. But then I saw a sharp note scribbled in the margins. Subject says she is not alone, can hear voices, beware. The words felt like a jolt of ice. I recalled the voice urging me to find her. What if the sessions hadn't worked? What if they had unleashed something instead? Suddenly the humming escalated, deep and resonant, echoing through the archives.
I slammed the files shut, my heart racing. Was something in the room with me? I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut, trapping me inside. Panic surged as I pulled on the handle. It wouldn't budge. "Help!" I shouted, but the sound swallowed in the silence. Then came the voices, soft, pleading, overlapping. "Help me. Find us." The warmth I'd felt before now turned icy. I sank to the floor, feeling the walls close in. My instinct screamed at me to escape, but I had to understand what was happening. That's what I promised. With every ounce of courage, I called out, "Jessica! Show me what you want!" The humming shifted suddenly, like 1,000 whispers merging into one. The air grew charged with energy, and the archives vibrated. I felt the temperature drop. The shadows in the room twisted, taking form. That's when I saw it, a figure emerging from the darkness. My breath caught again as I squinted to see through the dim light. Who was it? A figure I recognized, or something worse? "Please." The voice was haunting, echoing in my mind. "You need to remember." In that moment, everything spiraled. I realized I wasn't just unraveling Jessica's mystery. I was part of it too. I had to confront whatever had trapped her, and now me. What was the connection? What awaited me in those depths? Time was slipping away, and I could feel it. The shadows pulsed again as I braced for whatever would happen next. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face draped in shadows. My heart raced, fear gripping me like a vice. I strained to make out any detail, but the room warped and morphed around it. Was this the Jessica I knew, or someone else entirely? "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaky. The figure didn't respond with words. Instead, it raised a hand, pointing to what was behind me. I turned to see what it was indicating. A cabinet stood ajar, its contents spilling out onto the floor. Deeper inside, I could have sworn I glimpsed a glint of metal. A chill coursed through my body. I had to know what it was. As I approached the cabinet, the humming intensified again, vibrating in my chest, pulling me forward. "Please, help us." The voices grew, suffocating in their urgency. I forced myself to reach in, feeling around the cool metallic surface. My fingers brushed against something sharp. A small scalpel. I pulled it out and inspected it under the flickering light. This didn't belong to me. My mind raced with what this could mean. Suddenly, a cold breath lingered on the back of my neck. I turned abruptly, and the figure was gone, swallowed by the shadows. The soft pleas dissipated, leaving silence in their wake, alongside the echoing humming that persisted. The calm after the storm felt more wrong than ever. I was alone. My heart bounded, loud enough for me to fear it might breach my chest. The urge to bolt flooded my senses, but curiosity held me in place. What connections lay within these walls? I needed to know. I scanned the droves of paper scattered on the floor.
They were mostly unidentifiable, dated months or even years ago. Yet I caught snippets of names that seemed familiar, people who'd come searching for help just like me. Among them, another name stood out, Dr. Mercer.
I flipped through the pages until I found her file. Dr. Mercer had been the head psychiatrist overseeing Jessica's treatment. A part of me hoped this file would contain useful answers, but it was blank on the inside. No notes, no records, nothing but an empty shell. I suddenly felt small and adrift in the once consoled world that had turned into chaos. Then came a sound from the door, the soft scratching, like fingernails trailing across wood. My stomach dropped. This was not a figment of my imagination. Now I felt the deeper gravity of the situation weighing down on me. Whatever it was getting closer. "I have to get out of here," I whispered, but my legs felt like lead. I turned back to the cabinet to check for another way through, but then I heard it, a sudden crash, followed by an ear-piercing shriek. "Help! Us!" That's when the shadows came alive again, swirling towards me like an avalanche. I stumbled back, the door rattling violently. I had to run, and I had to run now, but where to? I glanced back to see the faces of the lost emerging from the darkness, their eyes pleading for help. Jessica's face was among them. As I turned to escape, I realized it wasn't just about saving her anymore. I was part of something much larger, something the walls had kept silent for too long. But what was waiting for me beyond the door? I lunged toward the door, my hands trembling as I grappled with the handle. The scratching escalated into frantic thumping, filling the air with a sense of urgency. Whatever was on the other side wanted to get in, and I had to get out. With a hard shove, the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit hallway. It felt like the bowels of the hospital, a labyrinth of pale tiles and flickering overhead lights. I didn't hesitate. I bolted through the doorway, heart pounding louder than ever. The corridor stretched endlessly, and with every step I took, the shadows seemed to follow, brushing close to my skin. Behind me, the screeches morphed into a chorus of desperate voices, each one clamoring for release. "Help! Us! Please!" They echoed like a haunting melody, twisting in my mind. I turned left, instinctively choosing a path away from the sounds. I needed answers, but I also needed to escape whatever was chasing me. The air grew heavy and stale, wrapping around me as I pressed on. Doors lined the hallway on either side, some cracked open, revealing darkness. Something caught my attention, a faint light seeping on my room at the end of the hall. I hesitated, battling with the instinct to run toward it. Should I check? Could it be another hiding place? Or worse, a trap? The voices in my head urged me forward. I approached the door cautiously, reaching out to touch the surface.
The moment my fingers brushed the cold metal, the screeching intensified behind me, making my heart jump. I pushed the door open and slipped inside. The room was filled with old medical equipment, instruments scattered haphazardly around. A single bulb flickered above, casting a sickly glow. In the corner, a desk was piled high with files, covered in dust. I rifled through them quickly, my breath quickening as I found a folder labeled Patient Files. There sat Jessica's name, encircled in red ink. I opened it, hoping for clarity. But the pages inside were stained, the ink running down like blood and water. Frantic notes scratched in the margins were barely legible, but words jumped out at me. The procedure, never again. A chill coursed through me. What had they done to her? I flipped to the next page. Just as I started to comprehend the implications, another crash resounded from the hallway, shaking the walls. I froze, the air thickening around me. Then I noticed something behind the desk, a small door, almost hidden from sight. Curiosity and fear battled within me. I had to decide. Do I stick around and risk whatever monstrous presence lurked just outside, or do I see what lay behind that door? Before I could think twice, I edged toward it, heart racing. That's when I saw it, a reflection in the metal. Two glowing eyes were watching from the darkened hallway, slowly making their way toward me. My breath hitched. They weren't human. I flung the small door open. It led down a narrow staircase, darkness swallowing my vision. But that was better than facing whatever was creeping closer. I jumped into the shadows, hoping this was the right choice, and that somehow I would still find Jessica. I stumbled down the staircase, each step taking me further from the horror above. The air grew colder, and the silence was unsettling. I could barely see, and the darkness wrapped around me like a thick blanket. The only sound was the soft echo of my footsteps against the concrete. At the bottom, I felt for a wall and found the cold, rough surface. I leaned against it, desperately trying to gather my thoughts. I had to keep moving, but where? This place was a maze.
I pushed forward, feeling my way through the darkness, praying for any sign of light. After what felt like an eternity, a dim glow emerged ahead. Relief flooded through me, and I quickened my pace. As I got closer, I saw that the light came from an open doorway. I stopped just outside, my heart racing again. What would I find inside? I peered through the threshold. The room was small, but filled with shelves, stacked high with bottles and jars. Medical supplies, I thought. A makeshift pharmacy? My eyes narrowed as I scanned the space. In the back, a lone figure sat hunched over a table, writing feverishly. I could only see the back of their head, but instinct told me to tread carefully. "Hello," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure froze. I felt my breath catch in my throat.
Would they turn around? Would they be willing to help?
"Who's there?"
A gravelly voice replied. I hesitated. I'm looking for someone," I stammered. Suddenly they turned to face me. It was a man, his features obscured by shadows, but his eyes glinted unnaturally. My heart dropped when I noticed the white lab coat he wore, a relic of the hospital's past. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice dripping with a mix of concern and something darker. "Please, I need to find Jessica. I think she's here." He stiffened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of recognition cross his face. "You're looking for the truth, aren't you?" My gut twisted. "What do you mean?" "There are things buried in this hospital, things they don't want you to find. Jessica was part of something much larger. The procedure." Before he could finish, the screeching outbreak from the corridor above returned, louder now. I could hear something crashing through, the voices rising to a cacophony. Fear flooded me once more. "Get out, before it finds you," he shouted, shoving a jar into my hands. "Take this. It's the only way to survive what's coming." "What? What do you mean?" I screamed over the noise. But as I gripped the jar, its contents swirling within, the lights in the room flickered violently. Then darkness engulfed us entirely. I was not sure what would come next, but I could feel the presence closing in, and I realized time was running out. I was blinded by the sudden darkness. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backwards, my back hitting the rough wall. The jar slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor. Glass shards scuttered across the concrete, and a thick, pungent liquid spilled out, emitting an acrid smell that burned my nostrils. "Get back," the man's voice echoed, urgent and fearful. I wanted to listen to anything but what was happening outside. Then I heard it, the sound of something dragging, heavy and deliberate. My heart raced. I had to escape. I turned towards the door, but the way was blocked. The silhouette of that lurking presence emerged from the shadows of the hallway. It was large, just a shape at first, but as it neared, I could make out the details, or the lack thereof. It moved in jerky motions, like it was glitching across reality. "Stay still," the man hissed beside me, his voice low but intense. I felt the urge to scream, to bolt for the exit, but his tone held me in place. What did he know? Suddenly, the lights flickered again, illuminating the creature for a brief moment. I saw it distinctly. Faded skin, sunken eyes that seemed to resonate with darkness itself. Its mouth opened, a wide gash of horrifying proportions, letting out an inhuman shriek. I let out a strangled gasp and finally found my legs. I dashed towards the doorway, but as I reached it, something pulled me back. A cold grip, like fingers made of ice, wrapped around my ankle. "Don't look back," the man shouted, but it was too late.
I turned my head just in time to see the creature's gaze fixate on me. A chilling sensation crawled up my spine as its cold breath washed over me. Some instinct kicked in, and I kicked my foot violently, freeing myself from the grip. I bolted through the doorway, ignoring the blood rushing to my ears. I couldn't think, couldn't process. All I knew was that I had to get away. I sprinted down the hallway, the light from the open doorway fading behind me. The screeching noises got louder, echoing off the walls as I ran deeper into the bowels of the hospital. Then everything went eerily silent. No footsteps, no screeches, just the rushing sound of my breath. I skidded to a halt between two ominous-looking doors. One was marked laboratory, while the other had no label at all. My instinct screamed at me to choose the laboratory, but as I reached for the handle, a voice whispered from behind me. "Choose wisely." I froze. The voice belonged to the man I had just met. He emerged from the shadows, face pale, eyes wide with urgency. "Do you understand what's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Not completely," he said, glancing nervously down the hallway.
But you need to decide. The wrong door could be your death. That's when I saw it, an object pulsing faintly near the base of the laboratory door. A small device, like a beacon. My mind raced with questions, but before I could ask, shadows shifted at the end of the corridor. "Make a choice," he urged, moving closer as the air grew thick with tension. Something was coming. I couldn't just stand there. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the surge of panic in my chest. The man's face looked desperate, urging me to choose quickly. I glanced down the hallway again. The shadows twisted and turned, inching closer. I knew whatever was lurking wouldn't wait patiently. The laboratory door seemed to shimmer in the low light, its pulsing device taunting me. I didn't have time to think about the implications of my choice. Adrenaline took over. I swung open the lab door, and the faint glow of the device spilled into the dark hallway. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of antiseptic and something else, a hint of decay. I stepped in, my heart racing as I scanned the cluttered room. Broken lab equipment lay scattered about alongside unmarked containers. It felt wrong. What had happened here? Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, causing a few vials to rattle on a nearby table. I instinctively pressed against the wall, the cold surface grounding me. But then, a chilling thought crept into my mind. What if I had chosen wrong? "Stay quiet," the man's voice whispered from outside, muffled against the door. I nodded instinctively, even though he couldn't see me. I felt stupid doing so, but fear rendered my thoughts muddy. I cautiously explored the room, my fingertips brushing against the nearest countertop.
My eyes darted to the device on the floor. It was more than a mere beacon. It was a count timer. The red numbers blipped ominously, ticking down from 5 minutes. "What is this?" I murmured. I realized too late that I wasn't just hiding, I was running out of time. Panic surged again, and I searched the lab for anything, a weapon, a clue, an exit. The walls were lined with shelves, all filled with unmarked glass jars entombing strange, floating substances. I barely had time to register them. There was no way I could escape if the creature came through the door. I darted to the far end of the room, where I found a sliding glass panel opening to what looked like a smaller storage chamber. I didn't hesitate. I squeezed through, my heart racing, and slid the glass shut behind me. This chamber was darker, but I could make out shapes. Crates stacked haphazardly in every corner, some half tipped over, others sealed tight. It seemed like a forgotten extension of the lab, untouched by time. Was this where they kept whatever they didn't want anyone to find? And then I saw it. Among the crates, one had a series of labels, names of patients. The last name was familiar. It sent a wave of dread washing over me. It was someone I knew. I reached for it, trembling. That's when I heard it again. The dragging sound had returned, but now it was amplified. It grew louder, crawling through the thin wall that separated me from whatever lay outside. The timer beeping incessantly in my ear, I had to act. I needed to find a way out. Just as I turned to look for an exit, I felt something shift behind me, cold and heavy. My breath caught in my throat, and I slowly turned, knowing that whatever I found would decide my fate. The shadows billowed, coalescing into a form that felt both familiar and utterly alien. My heart pounded in my chest as I recognized a face glinting in the dark, a face I had seen in a flickering photograph just hours before. Jessica stood there, her expression somber and urgent, a silent plea filling her gaze. But behind her, the darker presence loomed, an echo of a nightmare that pulled at the edges of my consciousness. "Help me," Jessica mouthed, her voice swallowed by the cacophony. The shadows behind her shifted, writhing as if something alive was trapped within them, clawing to be freed. The timer continued to count down behind me, the red digits flashing ominously as I sensed the creature moving closer. "Stay back," I shouted instinctively, but my voice trembled with uncertainty. "What do you want?" The room filled with Jessica's soft, mournful humming, a haunting lullaby that wrapped around me like a shroud. It was both beautiful and terrifying. The creature pressed against the edges of my vision, but I couldn't focus on it, not with Jessica pooling light and darkness simultaneously. Suddenly, the shadows exploded outward, and I felt an icy touch grazed my arm. I stumbled back, the weight of dread crashing upon me as I reached for the crates, desperate for anything to use as a barrier. My fingers brushed a plastic container, and I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. An old syringe? No help at all. But somewhere among the shadowy whispers that surrounded me, I felt a surge of resolve. "Enough!"
I shouted into the suffocating darkness, hoping to pierce the veil of despair. "You think you can control me? You're wrong!" The shadows shivered at my words, and for a moment the incessant humming grew louder, almost as if taking offense. In that breath of stillness, the air crackled. They were preparing to charge, and I could sense the thin line between this world and the next fraying. "Jessica!" I cried, thinking of the connection we shared. "You chose to stay here, but I can't. I can't let you lose yourself. Help me save you." Directing my focus toward her, I held out my hand, hoping to reach the part of her still tethered to the living world. In response, she stepped closer, her eyes reflecting my longing for answers. Then the walls throbbed violently, and the grotesque specter at the edge of reality surged. It was hungry for the warmth of life, drawn to my fear like moth to flame. I grasped the syringe, gripping it like a lifeline. What if I used it as a bargaining chip? "Let her go!" I yelled, feeling foolish and brave at all once. "If you want to sacrifice, take me instead." In that very moment, the world seemed to still, every breath catching in an icy breath of uncertainty. The creature halted, caught off guard, its eyes narrowing in a predatory way. Jessica's form flickered, her eyes wide with both hope and despair, urging me not to volunteer for darkness. "No, don't!" she cried softly, as if her spirit was pulling at the threads that bound us to sanity. But I couldn't be afraid any longer. Something within me sparked, a resilience that hungered to break free. "What do you want? Feed on despair?" I shot back. "This has to stop. Let her go, or let us go together." The shadows roared, amalgamating as they brushed against my skin like ice. The ambiance shifted, oscillating between worlds, my pleas echoing down an endless corridor of memories, hopes, and fears. From the corner of my eye, I caught movement and acknowledgement from Jessica. Her essence shimmered brighter, defying the overwhelming darkness, and in that flicker, I understood. This was not just my battle, it was hers as well. Turning to face the creature, I prepared for whatever confrontation lay ahead. "Face me," I demanded, channeling the energy coursing through my veins. "You will not take her. You want to steal life, but we can dictate our paths, our fates. We will break the cycle." The shadows recoiled, screeching, an awful sound that reverberated through the air, igniting every nerve in my body. The creature convulsed, as if the very essence of my defiance struck it at its core.
Time slipped away beneath the flickering timer, and that insatiable hunger grew more restless. I could still feel the claws scraping at the door of our reality, and I steeled myself as I took a step forward. I refuse to surrender. I thrust the syringe into the air, determination surging through me like wildfire, igniting the remnants of Jessica's spirit. The shadows thrashed violently, and for an instant I believed we might find a way to escape, together. Then darkness enveloped us completely. I felt something shift beneath my feet, and I could sense the threshold of reality blending into a thin line. Would this potion save us, or ruin everything? With one final shout, bearing the weight of all that we had endured, I plunged the syringe into the ground with all my might. To freedom! For a heartbeat, gravity slipped, the air shimmered, twisted, and then erupted like a dam breaking. I awoke with a gasp, surrounded by the sterile scent of antiseptic and fading light. I could still feel the remnants of shadows brushing against my skin. In that moment of clarity, I realized I was back in the hallway, light spilling from above, and the weight of whispers faded into silence. I shot to my feet and glanced around, ready to confront whatever darkness awaited me, but the unsettling stillness rang through the deserted hospital. My heart raced as I stumbled back, uncertain. What remained of our struggle? Was it over, or had we simply exchanged our chains? I moved, feeling like a ghost drifting through the lifeless corridors. The hospital loomed, heavy with secrets, and I found myself glancing at the door to room 204, dreading the unanswered questions still buried within. Jessica's reflection taunted me, a fleeting thought echoing as I left the building. I knew I would never return, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was part of something vast and ominous. It haunted my dreams, an unresolved mystery stretching beyond the veil of the living.
I hope you're free now, Jessica, I whispered, walking into the dim light of dawn, leaving the past behind, but carrying its weight forever. I may never understand everything that happened, but I knew one thing. I was not just a nurse anymore. I was a witness to the unspeakable, forever changed in a world straddling light and shadow.